Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Pastor Pierre. I wanted to share something with you. Today is my grandmother's birthday, and I wasn't feeling well. Had a little too much pepperoni pizza last night and gave me a little heartburn, so I was going to stay in, and my family was getting together to cook dinner for my grandmother, and my son had just left a program at school, and he was on his way to go and hang out with some friends at an event. So while he was on his way to the event and I was at home, I told him, I said, well, let's call Nana and wish her a happy birthday. So somewhere in explaining that to him, he didn't realize that I was going to use a tool called three-way. And so all of a sudden, when he heard my voice and he heard her voice all at the same time, he could not move forward and wish her a happy birthday or have any sort of conversation, because he kept on going back to that small detail that he could hear both of our voices at the same time, and we were all in three different places. So every time I tried to move on in the conversation, he kept on saying, wait a minute, but are you guys together? Are you at Nana's house? And, how is this happening? And I cracked up, and then he eventually wished her a happy birthday, and he told her that she is infinity. I guess he was trying to tell her that you've been around here forever, and this is his great-grandmother, my grandmother. And but I thought about this, and I thought about how sometimes we move on in life without paying the small things enough attention, and we don't get the understanding in the small things. And what happens is that when we don't get the understanding in the small things, we just opt to get the understanding or perhaps celebrate and enjoy only when we get to the destination. And my son refused to move on in the conversation without understanding this three-way thing. And oftentimes it's those small things that the enemy uses, those seemingly insignificant details or insignificant situations, and he uses those things to cause us to lose our fight. Nehemiah chapter 4, when they were almost finished rebuilding the wall, and the enemy thought that Nehemiah and his crew had no idea that they were about to come at him. But Nehemiah did this. Nehemiah said, so what I did, I ordered some of the men to station themselves at the most vulnerable places on the wall. And sometimes those most vulnerable places in our lives are those insignificant places that we're used to the same old thing. We're used to the enemy coming at us the same old way. And the Bible says that we're not ignorant of Satan's devices. So it caused me to think about some of the insignificant things in my life where they were really vulnerable places. And I know they were vulnerable places because I've been attacked in those areas before. And I started to think about how certain battles I lost, perhaps, maybe possibly, because I did not pay enough attention and give enough focus to the insignificant or the seemingly insignificant things. Perhaps I was used to them happening, so I just said, okay, well, this too shall pass. But Nehemiah said that he ordered his men to stand at the most vulnerable places with their weapons. Whenever we go through things in our homes, in our jobs, in our churches, in our schools, whatever is going on, if it does not line up with the will of God for our lives, we have to understand that here it is where those powers of darkness are now trying to rise up to take control. And the enemy has no problem with you and I when he has control. But it's the moment that we begin to fight back. It's the moment that we begin to war in the spirit, where then all hell breaks loose and he loses his mind. And now here it is, there are things in our lives, there are things in my life, there are things in your life that perhaps seem insignificant, certain situations that may be frustrating or annoying. So you and I are to recognize that no matter what is going on, we're always in a spiritual fight. Those frustrating things, those difficult things that may be small, it's always a spiritual issue. The Bible says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and spiritual rulers and powers of darkness. So we've got to put enough fight in even the small things. Sometimes we save our fight and we save our warring in the spirit just for when things really get bad. But no, perhaps we should be like my son, the little prophet, and say, you know what, I'm not going to move on from this small thing. Although it seems insignificant, sometimes the devil does his greatest work, his most significant work in those areas and in those situations that are seemingly insignificant to us. So when we know how the enemy is going to attack, when we know and we think about how he has attacked before, even David knew that the enemy will come back at you with the same stuff, with the same problems over and over over again. That's what happened with David when the Philistines came once again to battle him. And he could have thought, well, didn't I just defeat y'all before? Now y'all are back again. So we're not ignorant of how Satan attacks us. So how about we war in the Spirit, warring in the Spirit, a prayer, a fasting, praising God and worshiping, really seeking the face of God, falling on our knees and falling on our faces to seek His face in the middle of those insignificant things. What will happen when we pay attention to the small things? It'll cause us to be able to get the understanding and enjoy the journey instead of just waiting till the end of a thing or waiting until the destination in order to understand what happened and why things happen. No, I've made up in my mind for the rest of this year, for this season in my life, that even with the insignificant things, I'm going to war in the Spirit, that I'm going to get my fight back and I'm going to get up and move something. Remember, we just talked about how God will bless those who bust a move. So I dare you, even with the small things, bust a move. Be persistent in prayer. Be persistent in praise and worship. Fast. Seek God's face. Spend time in His Word and get an understanding in both the large things and even those small, insignificant things, because we want to win at all times. We don't want to give the enemy any chance to defeat us. Be encouraged with that. I hope it encourages you, because it surely encouraged me, and I'm going to have an ear to hear what the Spirit is saying, and I'm going to now close my eyes to the flesh and open them back up to the Spirit to see things as God sees them at all times. And don't just celebrate when you get to the end. Celebrate along the way. Don't just get the understanding at the end of a thing. Get the understanding while you're still journeying. God bless you. I'll see you soon.